Well, hello everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Listen, I've got straight up 12 noon, high noon on Hump Day. That is about as middle of the week as you get. So welcome to the middle of the week. You're halfway there. This one's probably going to push you over the edge, get you juiced up and ready to go for the second half. So anyway, thanks for making the time for us today. These are fun to do. Just kind of little bite-sized learning tidbits, if you will. We don't really go into some of the concepts as deeply as we would in a workshop, but hopefully, there's some nuggets that you can take from today. Probably already figured out that you can hear me, but I can't hear you, and that's just a way that we manage the background noise. We got a lot of folks on here, but we got an impressive group today. This would be a fun workshop group to have because there's some heavy hitters on the call today. So I wish we were all in one room because that'd be a lot of fun, and I'd get to see you, and we'd have a lot of fun with that. But listen, we typically don't open this up for everybody. These are some complex topics today. Core competencies and key work systems. In my experience as an examiner and a applicant, these kind of fit in the advanced class, if you will. Even at Mesa, 2 Baldrige Awards later, I wouldn't say Mesa is really a great role model for core competencies and key work systems. So, what we're going to do today is take a couple of topics that are pretty complex, pretty hard to wrestle with, and try to simplify them, try to make them as common sense as possible, and that's hard to do. So typically we don't open these up to questions, but today we're going to have some breaks for questions as we go along, and I'll unmute everybody and give you a chance to ask any questions, just to make sure that that we're delivering some of the concepts with clarity, that you're really getting that, and make sure that we're picking up any questions that you might have, because you're investing your time, and I want to make sure it's a valuable time. If you got questions along the way, there's a little chat feature on your GoToMeeting box, and just type me a question in there, and I can see it pop up as we go along. But again, we'll have breaks as we go along. Another thing I'd say is we typically run through these, and sometimes run through pretty quick. And if you're taking notes, you don't get a chance to take notes. Well, there's nothing. There's no secret confidential information on these slides, so if you want a copy of the slide presentation afterwards, you just didn't get a chance to make notes, I'll take some of the pressure off you. Hey, send me a note and I'll just give you the presentation slides. So don't worry if we pass by too quickly. I'll send that information to you. But thanks for making time for us today. This is going to be fun. Like I said, pretty complex topics, but I think pretty powerful ones. Again, if I use Mesa as an example, not really role models for these two topics, but I think where they're at on their journey, these are probably two of the more powerful ones that they could pick up. So we're gonna wrestle with them today and kind of see where we go, but this ought to be fun. So let's jump in. The first thing is I just want to lay a little context, because I think you kind of need to see where these fit in, because this all fits together in Baldrige. So if you remember, if you've seen this before, some of you have. We did this as a lunch and learn about a month ago, and I've done this in different presentations. But in an organization, leadership, what's leadership doing? They're leading folks in a direction. They're leading them on a mission, right? We like to be on a mission, and we have a vision in front of us, and hopefully we can sum those up in some type of result that we're after, right? We're after some type of result. I like to call that the bottom line, just because I'm a financial guy and bottom line fits in there. But your bottom line may not be financial. It may be student achievement. It may be patient outcomes. It may be taxpayer related. So whatever your bottom line is, whatever you're driving towards, typically like to see that in a result. Now, that we don't achieve anything unless we're doing something for a customer. That's just the way it works. Seems to work out like that. Your customer may be a student, maybe a patient, maybe something else, but I'll use the word customer generically to cover all those folks. Now, not everybody's our customer, right? That's what strategy is all about. It's about making choices about who we engage with as a customer, what products and services we'll deliver, what relationships we'll develop. We like to develop a strategic position because we want to be different in our target markets. We're targeting a market. We're not just going after everybody. And probably a good idea if you hear from those customers every once in a while, not just the current ones, but those that might be your customer at some point. So that's that. Now, we deliver value to customers through our operations. And here's where we're getting into today's topics: key work systems. We do it through key work systems. Think about operations like that. Core competencies tend to flow from strategy. Those are strategic concepts. Core competencies and key work systems are strategic concepts. So those want to flow from strategy and be related to those customers that you're picking out to do business with. And again, your customer may be a student or a patient, but again, you're choosing which ones. You've got a target market for those. You're delivering value through your key work systems based on your core competencies. You know, we don't get anything done in an organization without people, and so we've got a workforce. We want to have the right skill set, and we want to have enough of the right skill set, and that's capability and capacity. And when we're talking about core competencies, really we're wanting to develop core competencies in our workforce as well, because they're the ones that are executing those key work systems. And finally, as leaders, you know, our job is to engage that workforce in what we're doing, in our mission, in our strategy, and in the culture we're trying to develop. We've got boundaries in what we do. Those are values, those are laws, those are ethics, that's things like that. And everything that we do in that model, you know, we want it to be purposeful, systematic, and integrated. That's, you know, 3 words if you're going to you know, write something down. Those would be the 3 words. We want to be purposeful in what we're doing. We want to be systematic, and we want to be integrated. Now, that is the Baldrige Criteria. Again, Baldrige didn't come up with those categories. They just seem to happen in every organization. And so today we're talking about key work systems, we're talking about core competencies, but I want you to keep in mind where those fit, because we're going to be talking about them in context to those things. So related to our customers, related to our strategy, and things like that. So let's jump into it. Core competencies. Let's start with some definitions. If you're looking it up in the dictionary, core, it's a central, most important part of something that you do. A competence is the ability to do something well. So if I put those together, a core competency is the most important things that you do well. So again, this tends to be a little more advanced topic. I think we make this a little bit more complex than it should be. But a core competency, if you just want a really basic definition, something to work with in your own organization, think about it as the most important things that you do well. That's really what a core competency is. Like anything in Baldrige, they didn't come up with it. Baldrige didn't come up with this concept of core competencies. You know, Baldrige takes what is leading proven management practice and theory, and they weave it in the criteria. And so core competencies really been around for a long time, but a couple of guys back in the 90s, Gary Hamel and C.K. Prahalad, started talking about core competencies back then in a Harvard Business Review article, which is, you know, kind of where that topic became famous. But they've woven it into their work, and they're really the ones that get credited for bringing that conversation to the table. Baldrige took it and put it in the criteria. They define it like this: a harmonized combination of multiple resources and skills that distinguish a firm in the marketplace. Now, that's a little bit more heady than saying the most important things that you do well, but there's a couple of phrases in there, a couple of words in there that you want to key on. Harmonized combination. I mean, when we're talking about core competencies, we're talking about things that work together. It doesn't just exist in one person. It really exists in everything, or most everything that we do. It's resources and skills, and it distinguishes you in the marketplace. They said core competencies ought to have 3 characteristics. They said it ought to provide access to a wide variety of markets. So you may right now think about core competencies in terms of just what you're doing right now, but really a really good core competency, like miniaturization for Sony or a lot of electronics manufacturers. Miniaturization really cuts across a lot of markets. So a really good core competency is going to give you access to a wide variety of markets. It should be, you want to keep the customer in mind. It should have some perceived value to the customer. Otherwise, you know, really, who cares? You know, if at the end of the day it doesn't provide value to your customers, whatever you call your customers, then it kind of fits in the so what category, right? So a core competency should be, from a customer's perspective, should ultimately deliver value to a customer, and should be difficult to imitate by competitors. And so Gary and CK, they said that I have these 3 characteristics. Ought to be difficult because in a competitive world, you want to differentiate yourself. That's kind of the game there, is to be different. So Baldrige's definition, if you're a Baldrige scholar, as I know there are many on the call today, kind of flows from those two two definitions. It's your areas of greatest expertise that's strategically important, so it's the most important things that you do well, central to fulfilling your mission. Gives you an advantage in the marketplace because it's challenging for competitors to imitate. So if you're looking for a good checklist of whether or not you've got a good core competency identified, well, that's a pretty good one right there. So just kind of go down there and match those up. Okay, let's drill down that a little bit. So you got the definition, but what would that look like practically? So again, just kind of setting the table on this. Leadership, what do? We're on a mission, we got a vision, we got some values, which leads to our strategy, right? So our strategy flows from our mission and our vision, where we're picking out who we're going to do business with in our target market. What's our value proposition, which is just kind of a fancy way of saying what are the promises that we're making to those customers or those students or those patients or whatever it might be. And what's the position that we want to kind of maintain in their minds when they think about us? You know, what's that position in the market? That's all that stuff is, pretty basic stuff. But from those things come core competencies. And again, think of core competencies as those things that we've got to do really well in order to deliver on the promises to our customers, whichever customers we pick out. So think about it like that. So, you know, I kind of thought about this as I was putting this presentation together, and I could use a lot of different examples. And some of those examples might make sense to you and some of them might not, depending on what industry you're in. But I thought one that probably everybody on this call could relate to is just our organization, Oklahoma Quality, because most of you have been involved with us to some degree, so you kind of know what we do and can relate. And it's kind of a simple organization when it comes down to it. So what would that look like in our organization? Well, Oklahoma Quality, we've got a mission and vision and values. You know, our mission is to be a catalyst for economic prosperity. We want to be a generator of that. We want folks to succeed and prosper in Oklahoma. And we've got a vision. We're kind of be, do, have people. We want to be one of the top 5 state programs in the country. There's some good ones out there. We wouldn't be in that category right now, but we'd love to be one day. We want to produce 10 Baldrige Award recipients in the next 15 years. We think that's something that would be somewhat unprecedented. Not a lot of state programs have done that. Maybe Missouri, maybe Texas comes close, but that doesn't happen all the time. So we think that's a pretty good sign that this cure for the world that we've got, folks are using it, and it's good medicine for them. And we'd like to have more applicants, more full 50-page applicants per capita than any other state program in the United States. So not necessarily the most, because we're smaller in terms of population, but per capita, we want to have it going on. Values-wise, you know, some pretty common ones. Integrity. I don't think you do anything unless you do it with integrity. We promote excellence. We want to do things at an excellent level. Practicality, probably one that you don't see. We want everything we do to be very practical, very common sense. We value our community, those folks in our community of excellence that support us, and we're preaching results, so we want to produce results. So that's our mission, vision, values. So our target market would look like this. Our target market is obviously organizations in Oklahoma based, or those who have a big presence in Oklahoma. And typically the folks that get involved with us are high performing in some way. So they might have a great place to work. They might be great with customer satisfaction. They might be great with lean or something like that. But they're high performing organizations to begin with. They're results focused, and usually they're motivated by some type of public recognition or awards, and that's not a bad thing. You know, we're in the business of identifying role models. We want to hold them out and celebrate them and brag on them and things like that. And so if you're an organization who doesn't like that, you probably wouldn't participate with us. So that's our target market. Our strategic position in that target market is we're just the only one of our kind. We're the only rewards program and improvement methodology in Oklahoma that's results-based and really focused on a holistic, you know, strategic organizational management. So, you know, there are folks you can get involved with that are more focused on the workforce, so great place to work. Folks that are customer-focused, like J.D. Powers with customer satisfaction. You could get involved with lean and things like that, but there's nobody out there that's really focused on the entire organization. ISO would come close, but they're more operationally focused, I think, although moving away from that a little bit. But at a strategic level, there's nobody else like us. So our value proposition, our promises that we make to our customers are that we're going to deliver a cost-effective, measurable evaluation and a high-value feedback against a recognized world-class criteria for excellence in organizational management. Right now, that is Baldrige, but we wrote it in such a way that it could be someone. It could be Shingo at some point. So right now, it's Baldrige, but that's our value proposition. So from those things should flow our core competencies, and so the things that we've got to be really good at. One of them, the first one kind of makes sense. We've got to have advanced knowledge of Baldrige criteria. Now, I put core competencies in here and I put strategic advantages in here just to contrast the two, because what's the difference between the two? And think about core competencies as those things that you do, and think about strategic advantages as those things that you have. So core competencies, we do have an advanced knowledge of Baldrige criteria, and maybe advanced application of it is probably a better way to say that. We've got a team-based evaluation. That's something that nobody else really does. Our volunteer engagement, we don't do anything without volunteers. And one that we need, one that we're not good at, is connecting the what to the why. So the what is the criteria, the why is why should you do it, why should you do the awards program, how does the criteria relate to your organization and your environment, things like that. We need to be good at that, but we're probably not good at that right now. And so those things versus strategic advantages, we have an exclusive relationship with the Baldrige program. Nobody else can put on a Baldrige-based awards program in Oklahoma right now, as long as we're doing our job, because Baldrige won't let them. We've got a low-cost structure, and we've got great support from what we call our community of excellence in Oklahoma. So that's our core competencies, our strategic advantages. I threw strategic challenges in there just so I could balance out that chart right there. But look at those core competencies and come back to our definition. Organizations' areas of greatest expertise, I think those are. They're strategically important. They're central to fulfilling our mission. When you hit challenging for competitors to imitate, probably not, but in combination they probably are. And so we could probably use some work on those, but those are ours, core competencies. So hopefully, and I'm going to stop here in a minute and take questions if you have them, but hopefully, that flows nicely. You see that flow from mission, vision, values to target market, strategic position, value proposition to what are your core competencies. And so core competencies, those things that we have to be really good at in order to deliver on the promises that we make to our customers, and preferably that are difficult for our competitors to imitate. So some things to consider when you're thinking about core competencies. Core competencies exist at the intersection of your target market, your value proposition, and your strategic position. So they're very much customer focused, very much strategic focused. And again, they're those things that you've got to be good at in order to deliver on your value proposition, which is just simply the promises that you make to your customers. Core competencies should be considered as part of your strategic planning process. And I say that because, in your strategic planning process, you might revisit mission, vision, and values. You probably come up with some vital few objectives and initiatives that you're going to focus on. Well, in that process, you ought to be talking about core competencies, because there's no magic formula or template to use for coming up with this. Somebody's probably come up with that, but that wouldn't make sense to me. I mean, you come up with them the same way you come up with your SWOT analysis, and which is a conversation. It's a fact-based, broad-based conversation. Same way you come up with those things, you come up with core competencies, and you get consensus on those and see if they make sense. Core competencies should be measurable. So if you're in the awards process right now, and you've said, hey, our core competency is X, you got to be able to measure that, because you need to know if you're good at that or not, or how good. And so it ought to follow that let's see formula that's in Baldrige, right? You got to have some levels. You got to have some trends. Am I getting better at that? You got to have some comparisons. How do I compare against other folks? So a really good core competency should have some measures associated with it. And again, core competencies, I think, will evolve over time. This is one that's a little bit more of a mature topic, and you're not going to get it right the first time, just like you saw for Oklahoma Quality. We're not going to get those right the first time, but as we continue to revisit those, as we spin the flywheel, if you will, around and around, we should be revisiting core competencies, and those will evolve, because we'll we'll get smarter about those as we go. So so anyway, that was pretty quick. Core competencies. I'm gonna take this off of mute for everybody, and I just want to see if you got any questions. So make sure I'm covering what I needed to cover, and I didn't skip by that too quickly. So let me take it off mute, and I should be able to hear everybody. So any questions about what I just talked about? Any questions about the flow? Questions about how you come up with core competencies, what they ought to be? Let me just stop for a minute and see if there's questions. And if there's not, that's okay too.
Hey, Kerry, this is Matt Campbell at Metro Tech.
Oh, Matt.
Hey, on the one of the things you've got on there is the core competencies should be measurable. That, I mean, to me, it's that cross between a value versus a competency, where values are kind of where you want to go, what you believe in, and the competencies are, of course, what you do, which is why it should be measurable. I'm just wondering if you have some guidance on how you go about figuring that measurability of a core competency.
Yeah. So let me jump back. It's a great question. So I've got some core competencies up here for Oklahoma Quality. Advanced knowledge of Baldrige Criteria. How would I measure that? Well, that may be years of experience of Baldrige level examiners that are involved in my process. I mean, I could measure it like that. Volunteer engagement. Maybe that's a retainage, or how many folks return because they like it, or a survey. It could be that. So values more. I hear you. Values more. A little more difficult to measure. Core competencies, though, ought to be something that you can measure. So that might be something you have to wrestle with a little bit. But really, if you're saying it's a core competency, you need to know that you're good at that, and you need to know how good you are at that, and if you're getting better, right? Because that's something that, again, strategically is really driving you and driving a competitive advantage for you. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Other questions?
Kerry?
Yes.
Oh, hi, this is Elaine, Metro Tech. I really like the way that you have outlined your vision on being action-oriented, be, do, and have. And, you know, as I see yours and then I look at what ours is, yours is much more specific, I think, than ours is. And so I just wanted to comment on that I really like the way you have your vision of being action-oriented.
Yeah, I appreciate that. You know, go ahead.
Oh, I'm done.
Yeah, so I think that's a matter of style, matter of preference, you know, and I think about yours, or we've got some Integris folks on the line, and Integris folks, correct me if I say this incorrectly, but your vision, the most trusted name in healthcare, I think that's correct. Well, that's a nice vision to have. I mean, I can rally folks around. So it's just a matter of preference, but I appreciate you pointing that out. Okay, I'm going to move on. And if you've got other questions about core competencies, then send me a note in the chat or send me an email, and I'll make sure I address those. But I'm going to move on real quick. Okay, so core competencies we talked about, and that's our slide right there. All right, key work systems. Again, let's talk definitions here for just a minute. So a procedure, you know, written instructions for completing some kind of process activity. Think of a checklist, you know, just a kind of a menu of things, procedure. Some folks might say that's a process, and I'm not going to disagree with you because I don't know that there's a science behind this, but a procedure, work instruction, standard work, you know, if you have that language in your organization, that's a procedure. Now, a process, a little bit higher level, isn't it? So we're talking about a series of related steps to accomplish an outcome. Here we're talking about, hey, what's our input? What's our activities? What's our output? I mean, that's a good process description right there, if you can put it in those terms. Work system again, maybe a little bit more higher level here, because that's really an interrelated set of internal and external processes, isn't it? So might be things that you do internally. It could be things that happen externally with your suppliers and your partners and your collaborators. And so work system, again, one that has always been tough for me to wrap my head around, but I heard Harry Hertz describe it as, hey, think about it as internal, external processes that are working together. That's really a work system. What's the difference between that and maybe just a high level process? Well, I'd say the external element to that. So again, no magic behind that. There's no science behind that. And as we'll talk about, this whole identifying work systems and the appropriate level of process is really, to me, kind of an art, but it needs to have some kind of needs to make sense for you as an organization. Key then, the most important, the most critical. So that's what we're talking about here. I heard Midway USA, when they won their first Baldrige Award, so they just won their second Baldrige Award, I heard them talking about how they've got 1,500 processes documented. And I love those guys, by the way. But they said they had a process for changing out the fruit in the lunchroom. I wouldn't put that in the key category. Love them for doing that, but I wouldn't put them in the key category. So we're talking about the most important here. Okay, speaking of Harry Hertz, who, by the way, is like Yoda to me. If he says it, it's got to be true. He's like the master Jedi. If you're a Star Wars fan, I'm not. But Harry Hertz in a blog said, hey, really, there's just 3 basic generic work systems. You may have other ones. You may call it something else. But if you're just thinking about this work system thing, you might just think about it in terms of these 3. And the first one is engage the customer. Doesn't matter what business you're in, you've got to engage. You got to draw them in, you got to attract them, you got to keep them. So engage the customer. Second one is produce your product or your service, and then the third would be just generically support systems and processes. Okay, so back to Oklahoma Quality. What would this look like? So we talked about core competencies, and we talked about where we're at, mission, vision, values, and things like that. So core competencies are going to be those things that we've got to be really good at to deliver on that value proposition, but we're going to operationalize those through key work systems. I mean, that's how you got to think about it. So when I describe these key work systems, we ought to be able to look at those core competencies and say, yeah, I can see where those fit in. And if I don't, well, then I've got a little bit of a disconnect there. So our customer engagement work system would include a series of things that we do to attract and engage our customers or our community. So you can see those there. Customer engagement is the work system. The little check marks are the processes or the different activities. And then the orange box is what's the outcome from that work system? What are we trying to do with that thing? How is it building on the value that as we go through? So from our customer engagement, we want to attract a qualified opportunity to provide our service within our target market. So that's the intent of that customer engagement work system. Our produce our product or service work systems, to use Harry's language, we're in the kind of application, evaluation, and awards business, and so that's our primary one. And you can see our processes that go along with that. Oh, by the way, we didn't make those up. If you're a Baldrige person, those are Baldrige things. That independent review and consensus review and site visit, those are all steps or processes, if you will, under that work system. And so our objective is to deliver a high value feedback report and an appropriate award level to the applicant. That's what we hope comes out of that. We hope we're pretty good at it. We've got a couple of supporting ones. So we do education and coaching, but we only do those to support the application and awards process. So we put on workshops, we put on lunch and learns, we do things like that, but only to help those people who are in the awards process or are going to be in the awards process. We do coaching, we do like the onboarding process, we do that. We might do some strategic, planning, facilitation, but we only do that to support the applications, evaluation, and awards work system. So that's how those relate. We've got some support processes. We don't do anything without volunteers, so we've got to be pretty good about that. We don't do anything without funding. We're a nonprofit organization, so we've got to come up with funding for everything that we do. And we don't own or lease any buildings, so everything that we do, we got to find a place to do it, and we got to find the right equipment. And fortunately for us, we've got a great community of supporters out there that help us to do that. So so that would be kind of work systems for Oklahoma quality. Now, there's no magic to me. There's no magic in how you identify these things. I identified our produced product and service work systems in terms of what I'm gonna call value streams. So if you're a customer and you enter our world and want to do business with us, you're going to come in through one of these value streams. So you're going to either come into our awards process, you're going to come into a workshop or a lunch and learn, our education process, or you're going to come into a coaching transaction, but you're going to come in through one of those value streams. Healthcare, since I've been around that a little bit, tends to approach that about the same way. So you're going to be an inpatient, you're going to be an outpatient, you're going to be coming through the emergency department, maybe home health or something like that. That one makes sense to me because, again, these are strategic type decisions. And so a health system may say, okay, look, we'll own the inpatient part, but somebody else will partner with somebody to do the home health part of that. So I know a health system who does exactly that. I mean, they don't want to be in the home health, but they understand that's the continuum of care. So we've got some schools, career techs, for example, who won't approach it from a value stream. It's a hey, really, if you're a customer, no matter what you're doing with this, you're walking through these three things. And so I don't think I'm giving a competitive secret away for Metro Tech if I say, hey, I think there's our enrollment, instruction, and transition. So no matter which value stream you're in, whether it's full-time programs or short-term programs or biz, you're probably doing those three things, and those things make sense because that's a strategic issue. And how do you look at your organization? And so again, no hard and fast rules. It's just how do you if you're looking at how a customer starts and ends and goes through your organization, how would you break it up to make it make sense and make some key decisions? Because part of this is, so I've got outcomes for all these, and these are truly performance-based outcomes, but all the cost in your organization is wrapped up in these key work systems. And so there's an economic factor to all this. I mean, low-cost provider is still one of the best competitive advantages you can have. We all have limited resources. It doesn't matter who we are as an organization. We all have limited resources. So somewhere in there, economics has to play a factor. And if you could ever get down to, hey, what's the, what does each of my work systems cost me versus the benefit that I'm getting, you would really be in control of your destiny, because you could really make some great decisions about what I'm going to do versus what I'm going to let somebody else do. Along with the performance-based ones, which ones am I really good at versus which ones is someone else really good at. So there's an economic indicator in there somewhere as well. So key work systems, integrated series resources, relationships, and processes that convert our promises into value for our customers. So considerations there. Key work systems should reflect how work actually flows through your organization. It's easy to think about it in terms of value streams. So just like I had the awards process and the education process and things like that, just because that's easy doesn't make it the right thing to do. You need to think about it strategically. As I'm looking at how value gets created in my organization, how would I break it up to kind of make it make sense, and to manage it not just as one big glob of stuff, but as some pieces that I can wrap my arms around that has an objective to it, that I can evaluate, that I can determine whether I want to do it or let somebody else do it, and which pieces would I want to do that. So how it actually flows through your organization. Again, could be reflected by value streams or major activities. Each work system, I would say, should have an identifiable, measurable outcome objective. And so, if yours is enrollment, instruction, and transition, what's the outcome objective of each of those, and how does it support the next one? If yours is inpatient, outpatient, and home health, what's the objective for each one of those, and how does it support and relate to the other ones, the other value streams that you have, or are those just kind of disconnected pieces? That would be very telling. if you could understand the economics of each key work system, if you knew the cost of each work system and the benefit that you get, the value it contributes to your ultimate mission, that's an ideal state, really. And that's a very mature concept, but if you could ever get there, you own your destiny at that point. And again, just like core competencies, this is a tough one to wrestle with, but they will likely evolve as you mature. And again, these should be considered in strategic planning. Again, there's not a lot of folks that are really great at that. Key work systems tend to be something that, hey, that's really for the quality folks or the performance excellence folks. But these are really strategic decisions because, again, I'm going to say virtually all of the resources, all of the cost, all the money you have wrapped up in your organization happens in these key work systems. And so decisions about how you're going to use that, those are strategic decisions to make. So let me stop here. And I ran through that pretty quick for such a tough topic, but let me stop here and take this off of mute again and see what questions would you have about key work systems. And if you don't have any, that's fine.
Carrie, this is Joanne Henry. I do have a question. You mentioned 3 basic generic work systems, and then it seems like you lump in into buckets. What is your recommendation as to the number of key work systems? Just the 3 and then lump them into maybe those that are not key but related into like the bucket that you had identified?
Yeah, let me go back. So you're talking about Yoda's assertion here that there's only 3, and you're saying the non-key ones we just threw in support. Is that what you're saying?
Right.
Yeah. I think my answer would be yes. That you should identify the key ones, and so these may not be your key. You may look at this differently, but I think structurally, as you're thinking about it, I mean the customer engagement and the produce the product and service buckets, if you will, makes a ton of sense because you've got to engage folks no matter what you're doing. You got to attract customers. You got to keep them and things like that, and then you got to actually do what you do, which is produce the product and service. Now, once you get down here to support and you're lumping stuff in, to me, this is more of kind of a gut check to me. So if you're lumping stuff in here and you look at that and you say, man, this one, I don't know why we've got it, but I got to put it somewhere, so I'm going to lump it. That one might be one you look at and you say, I wonder if I could do without that. I wonder if I could outsource that, because that one really, it's not central to what I'm doing. So yeah, I would probably lump it in there to find a place for it, but then I'd start to evaluate why I have that. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Okay, other questions?
Hey, Carrie, we're not thinking that necessarily 3 is the magic number. It's one that kind of makes sense. But again, every organization is unique, and it may be 2 or 3 or 4, or I hope not 18, but it's possible, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think there's any science behind this, and this is one I think, just like I think everybody on the call today probably has a pretty good strategic planning process, and in that process, you've done a pretty good job of, say, identifying mission, vision, and values, and maybe some vital few objectives. Well, I'm going to guess that even those have evolved over time. You weren't really good at those the first time you did it, but each time you come around that flywheel and look at it again to improve it, it probably gets a little bit better. And I would put core competencies and key work systems in that same category to say that they need to be at the strategic planning table, I think, and it needs to be something that you look at just like your mission and vision, and you say, well, does this make sense anymore? I think you look at those and you say, does this make sense anymore? Did I get it right the last time? And what improvements would I make to really add a lot of clarity and meaning to that? I think that's the process. To to me, there's no magic grid or template that would allow you to come up with just the right key work systems. And whether it's 3 or 5, it's probably not 18. You're right, but it's a few. And so those are just things that you need to wrestle with and make sense for your organization. And thinking about, you know, how value actually gets created from the time a customer kind of comes into the process to the time they leave the process. You know, what are the steps that create value? And if you could shake some things out to say, okay, well, I don't know how these fit into creating value. Well, you've just you know, found the pot of gold right there, because that's stuff that you probably don't need. Okay. That was a longer answer than what you asked me. Okay, other questions? Key work systems. All right, I'm gonna move on, although I think I'm at the end, so I'm gonna put this on mute just again. There we go. Okay, so that is the end. So core competencies, key work systems, pretty tough ones, but I think those are the probably 2 of the more powerful ones that you can come up with. They tend to be some that are in the advanced class. So if where you're at, and I would put MESA here, 2 Baldrige Awards later, I'd put MESA in the same category. If where you're at is, man, we've got this leadership thing down, we've got this strategic planning thing down, we got this voice of the customer and great place to work thing down, we've got some key measures, I'm going to guess the next frontier for you to start to wrestle with and get really good at is core competencies and key work systems. We're going to have a lunch and learn next month. I think next month's lunch and learn is about innovation and intelligent risk taking, and those are pretty powerful topics, but they're related to key work systems. And so you innovate your key work system. You innovate in your core competencies. That's what you innovate. So these are really powerful concepts, and if you get these down, I mean, you are really ahead of the game. So advanced topics, but probably where most of you are, just because I know where most of you are, they're ones that you're going to want to, they're kind of on the next frontier for you to start wrestling with. Use a lot of common sense with these things. Don't try to make them more difficult than they are. Core competencies, just the most important things I've got to do to deliver on my value proposition, which is just my promises to my customers or my patients or my students. And then my key work systems is how do I operationalize that? How do I get that stuff done? How do I bring my core competencies to life in what I do? And how do I do it in a way that's really economically gives me an advantage over other folks that are out there doing it, because we don't have unlimited resources. So that would be my guidance on that. So listen, thanks for hanging with me through all that. That was 2 quick ones, but two pretty good ones. Got some upcoming learning opportunities if you're into that game. Listen, March 23rd, if you haven't registered for that, send me a note and I'll send you the link. But if measurement is an area where you could be better at, and I know we all could be, this is one you're going to want to come to. Susan Dragoo, who was formerly with Integris, who is like a measurement guru, is going to be putting on that workshop on the 23rd there at Oklahoma City. Next month, Lunch and Learn, Learning, Innovation, and Intelligent Risk Taking. Again, 3 big ones there to wrestle with. We're going to see if we can fit that in one Lunch and Learn. April the 20th, if you're just kind of new on this journey to excellence, or if you know somebody that's new and would benefit, this is going to be a workshop where you spend a day and we're going to give you a jump. We're going to get you going, and we're going to talk about strategy and vital few objectives and core competencies and things like that. But you're going to walk out with really a nice jump start to what you're doing. May 11th, Lunch and Learn. I just don't know what they're going to be yet, but May 25th, 6 Disciplines for Excellence. So we did that last year, had a pretty good turnout in Oklahoma City and Tulsa, so we'll do that again. Again, we'd love to present this material or any of our content from our Lunch and Learn sessions to your teams at your organization. So if you're looking for a good learning session, we'd be glad to do that. And if you're involved in an industry association that needs speakers at its meetings, hey, we've got to get out and spread the gospel, don't we? And so we'd love that opportunity. If you just need somebody to come in and talk, everybody needs a lunch speaker. So so keep us in mind for those. Listen, hey, thanks for making time for us here on the middle of the week, Hump Day. and I hope you enjoy the rest of your Wednesday, and I hope to see you at one of our other sessions. All right, so listen, have a great day. I'll talk to you later. Bye.